My name is Candice Bocala. I am a lecturer at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. I'm also the research director for the DataWise project. Most of the work that I do involves studying organizational conditions for teachers to collaborate and school leaders to collaborate. And I do a lot of work in designing professional learning experiences for educators to use data for instructional improvement. DataWise has three main components in our framework. The first is an 8-step continuous improvement process. This is what people normally think about when they think about DataWise. It begins with a prepare phase where we encourage educators to organize for collaborative work and build data literacy. And then it goes into an inquire phase where they examine multiple sources of data, qualitative and quantitative, that relate to an educational question that they are generating. The whole point here is to ignite curiosity for inquiry and then to dig into multiple sources of learner evidence, as well as evidence of classroom practice about what's working and what could be improved. It ends with an act phase, which contains an action plan where educators use research-based or evidence-based instructional strategies to try something different in their classrooms, and then also assess their impact, both on learner experience and learner outcomes. And the very last step is the step where they just act and assess and adjust along the way and reflect on their learning. There are other two parts to the DataWise model that are outside of this 8-step process, which is the habits of mind that we ask our educators to cultivate, regardless of what step they're on. That includes a shared commitment to action, assessment, and adjustment, a commitment to intentional collaboration, and a relentless focus on evidence. So those are sort of overarching habits of mind. The third component are a set of critical questions that we have educators ask themselves at each step of the process to really make sure they are considering the needs and the impact that they're having on each learner in the building. And we call these the equity questions. These are questions that ask educators to just pause and think, for example, does our practice meet the needs of each learner? And it centers this question of who are we serving well and who are we not yet serving? Data-wise work happens mostly in schools within teams of educators who are working together to solve educational problems. So at the school level, there might be an educator team that's comprised of an administrator plus a group of teachers, maybe an instructional coach, who get together and they say, we have some enduring questions that we're not able to find answers to. So they might use DataWise to begin to engage in an inquiry about how are our students performing in mathematics? How are we developing social and emotional skills for our learners? And so they would bring a variety of data sources to this 8-step process, and they would engage in instructional conversations. They would gather and analyze multiple sources of evidence, take action, and then assess the results of their action. So this happens mostly at the school level, but it also does happen at the system level. And one of the arguments that we've been making more and more is that at the system level or at the district level, we also need inquiry-based teams who are trying to look at important educational questions and use a variety of data sources. At the system level, it's more common that they're looking at evidence from their learners who are adults in the system. Maybe it's teachers, maybe it's principals. So they may have questions about how they as a system are serving their adult learners so that those adult learners can better serve young people. We like to think of DataWise as being for any educator who wants to solve a problem using a variety of sources of evidence. So they could use it at the school level to tackle an instructional question or a question about student belonging or behavior or school climate. It could also be used at the system level to tackle questions of adult learning, principal support, professional learning, and how things are going across schools within a system. So it's really an improvement process at its heart. And so that means anytime you can think about an issue that you would like to work on collaboratively with other educators, whether it's at the school or the system, we think you could use DataWise. DataWise is really good for encouraging collaborative inquiry. And our distinction here is between the kind of inquiry and data analysis that you can do as an individual just by picking up a set of student scores or looking at your own students' work, or if you are at the system level, looking at data from across all of your schools, you can do that as an individual. We think DataWise is really powerful because it is at its heart a collaborative model, and the tools, the protocols, the way that we ask educators to work together, it's really not as much about the technical skills of looking at spreadsheets full of data. It's more about the kinds of conversations, the kinds of inquiry processes, and the ways that you get educators to commit to actions and follow through in a collaborative way. So we think DataWise is really unique in that way, that we are encouraging that level of collaboration. DataWise works best when a team at a school or system level acknowledges the need to go a little bit slower through an inquiry process that really asks hard questions. We don't think DataWise works well if you're looking for quick solutions or easy fixes or a data protocol where you can change what you're doing in the next week. We think that the power of DataWise is in taking a deliberate process that will allow you to examine more of what's happening across your school, because we're asking you to look at multiple sources of data, not only for students, but also about instruction. And by taking all of this evidence in and really committing to a thoughtful action plan, we do ask people to go a little bit slower so that they can do more of that analysis and then have more thoughtful actions that are grounded in a real understanding of the problem that they're trying to solve. So we think that going slower, a team that's willing to slow down, a team that's willing to take the time and be that deliberate, DataWise works really well for them. Some of the biggest challenges in a DataWise project are when teams really want to have those quick fix solutions, when they see the act of going slower as not useful, not efficient, not helpful, and they just really want to know, what do I change? What do I do now? What do I do differently? And our argument is that while you're doing this inquiry that's a little bit more deliberate, a little bit more thoughtful, you are probably still picking up changes that you can make that are easy fixes or quick wins. So we're not saying that that's impossible through DataWise, but what we're asking you to do is go into a mindset that is a little bit more systematic, perhaps, than maybe we're used to making decisions about data in schools. And so by using that systematic process, you'll get to better solutions. And you'll also solve problems that are harder and more entrenched. So I think the challenge is when we meet up against this culture of the quick fixes, the easy wins, and also a sense of urgency. We know that it is urgent to solve problems in schools, and yet we still haven't solved some of the hardest problems out there. So I think a challenge for us is really trying to combat that, that tendency to want to go quick and meet the urgency of the moment, but maybe without the level of thought that we're asking people to do in DataWise. I think a first piece of advice I would give to a school that wants to get started with DataWise is to organize yourselves around or with teams that are really invested in starting an inquiry process. I think it is challenging when you have people who are either told to participate but are not interested or not willing. And so then it's harder to have those kinds of collaborative conversations that is at the heart of the DataWise model. So a piece of advice I would give is to be really thoughtful about, where is the first team, or who is the first team who is going to engage in this process? Are you going to start with a leadership team so that you can, as school leaders, learn the process yourselves and then begin to teach others about the process? Are you going to pick a grade level or a department team that is already eager and invested in trying something new with inquiry? I think those are the places that I would leverage first, because the first step of the DataWise process is all about organizing for collaborative work, and the choice of the team that starts really affects how you get going in that step.